Oh, you'd better not discriminate. If you're a bakery, you'd better bake a wedding cake for a gay wedding, even if you're a Christian who's opposed to that. If you're a landlord, you'd better not refuse to rent to students or people on welfare or anyone poor. That would be illegal discrimination. I'm serious. I mean, here's a rather rough-looking young woman named Thala Page Dixon Eat. That's her name. She's got radical hair, radical tattoos. She's got a troubled past. She wanted to rent an apartment when she was 17 years old. The landlady said, no thanks. The girl looked too risky, obviously. But the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario called that discrimination based on age and ordered the landlady to pay her $10,000. But that's nothing. Take a look at this fancy French restaurant called Le Papillon. It won't surprise you to learn that they serve pork there. It's a French restaurant after all. You can tell that by the Le Papillon part, and you can tell it serves pork by looking at the menu. Well, 3 Muslim cooks applied to work there, and they were hired. But then they refused to taste the food they were cooking because it had pork in it. Imagine a cook who won't even taste his own food. At a gourmet French restaurant, they took Le Papillon to the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario for religious discrimination, and they won $100,000 for hurt feelings, plus $7,500 for legal costs. Hurt feelings? Got it. So we've got the counterfeit human right to work as a chef without having to taste the food you're making. No, it's better than that. The counterfeit human right to go to work for a restaurant that you know serves pork, pretending that you can do the job, and then crying racism when you later say you can't or you won't. Got it? So don't do that in Ontario. You'll be ground into powder by hunter-killer, politically correct social justice warriors at the kangaroo court called the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. Oh, but did I mention there's an exception to all this? Let me tell you about it. See, here's a young guy, 21 years old, Toronto boy, named Austin Lewis, paralyzed, lives in a wheelchair, tough stuff. He applied for subsidized housing in Toronto to an apartment at 3001 Finch Avenue. He was put on their waiting list. But then he was told he didn't qualify. Why? Were they discriminating against him because of his age or because of the wheelchair? How much did he get for that discrimination? Was it $10,000 like that other teenager got, or was it $100,000 like those Muslim cooks got? No. He got nothing other than an amazing explanation. You see, he's not allowed to rent that apartment because he's not Muslim. See, 3001 Finch Avenue gets government subsidies. All sorts of taxpayers chip in. Jewish taxpayers, Christian taxpayers, atheists, Hindus, Sikhs, and yes, Muslims. But only Muslims are allowed to live there. And that's okay by the city. Let me quote John Gosnach of the City of Toronto. Here's what he told Global News. The City of Toronto actually signed a written contract with a Muslim group, quote, to restrict tenancy to members of the Muslim Jamaat, unquote. That's the Arabic word for congregation. It's quite something that the City of Toronto is actually using the Sharia law term. Now let me say this. I think anyone in Canada should have the right to discriminate on their own property. I mean, think about it. You can choose who you do or don't allow into your home for dinner or a Christmas party. You can open your home up to the whole block or just choose your friends or just choose people of a certain race or religion. And I believe that property rights and the freedom of association should apply to privately owned companies too. I think a Christian baker should have the same right to say no when asked to bake a gay wedding cake as a gay photographer should have the right to say no if he's asked to film a Christian wedding. That's what freedom means, the freedom to be left alone. There's no right to command people to do something. That's not a right at all. That's a power over others, usually backed up by the state. So I believe that the Ahmadiyya Jamaat here, the Muslim group, has the right to allow only Muslims to live in their building. It's discriminatory, but I think a landlord should be able to discriminate about his own place. In a multi-ethnic city like Toronto, landlords will lose money soon if they are racist, but the Ahmadiyya here don't care. Now that's fine by me, but here's the wrinkle. As I said before, they have a contract with the City of Toronto that subsidizes the place. So it's not truly their own private property. It's being subsidized by money from all taxpayers. If they want to have a Muslims-only apartment building and kick out white kids in wheelchairs, They can live with the public odium and the contempt of their neighbors and the poor reputation they'll have in the larger community. But look, it's their building. They can be racist about it. But with public money, now look, that's my view. I'm a libertarian when it comes to property rights, just like I am with free speech rights. I think free speech and property rights belong to everyone, even people who say things I don't like to hear, or who would keep me off their property for reasons I think are unfair. But that's my view. It's obviously not the view of the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. They don't believe in property rights or the right to discriminate even in private property, even for good reason. They think that Muslim cooks have the right to be pork cooks at a pork restaurant without tasting pork. They believed a tattooed teenager with no job is a tenant who must be accommodated. But a wheelchair-bound white kid, normally he'd be their latest cause célèbre. But against a Muslim-only ghetto, no chance. You see, the left talks about the bad old days when there were apparently signs saying things like no Jews allowed, no Irish allowed, no blacks allowed, things like that. But the left has just approved the 21st century version of that. No infidels allowed, even in a wheelchair. I always knew the left abided bigotry. I just didn't know they wanted the rest of us to subsidize it too. For TheRebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.